You're tuned into the Zealous Podcast. I'm your host, Rocky Snyder. This week, Joey Greany is with me. He's the strength conditioning coach with the Tampa Bay Rays. But before we get underway, hey, if you've got a medical and training team that needs some continuing education, maybe athletic trainers, physical therapists, chiropractors, strength coaches, why not look us up at rockysnyder.com. We've got continuing education workshops. We'll travel to you or have you come to us, rockysnyder.com. Also, check out santacollege.com. They've got a master's of science in performance coaching, as well as sports injuries and return to performance management. They've got a learning track for applied sports biomechanics and movement science, as well as applied sport and exercise psychology. Go to santacollege.com, enter RS10 for 10% off tuition. And while you're online, go to the NSCA's website. If you're a member, please remember, cast your vote. Click subscribe to this show and enjoy our conversation. Joey, I can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast here. First, welcome. It's nice to meet you. And I'll let you say hello. There you go.
Yeah, Rocky, thank you for having me. It's nice to meet you also, and everything you've done in the strength conditioning field and pushing our profession forward.
Well, it seems like we're on the same playing field when it comes to that, because you were presenting this past January at the coaches conference, and did you get the nod for next January? Or are you going to go again?
I haven't heard yet, so maybe soon. But yeah, I would love to. It's an incredible event. You meet so many different coaches from all around the world, and I would love the opportunity to speak again at the NSCA.
Right on. Well, I imagine, of course, the national conference is coming up in just a few weeks in Baltimore, but you with the Rays are just you're approaching the halfway point in the season. So I can't imagine you would sneak away for the conference. Are you going to go to the national conference by chance?
No, I won't be able to make that. I haven't made the national conference in almost 20 years now. So yeah, it's difficult during the season with the amount of games and the travel schedule. But yeah,
20
again,
years.
that's another amazing conference.
Yeah. So you've been with the NSCA for 2 decades now?
Yeah. Yep.
Impressive.
Yeah, certified in 2007. Yeah.
Fantastic.
2007. Mm-hmm.
Give us a little rundown about your background, superhero origin, as I call it. Where did you come from, and how did you get into the minors, into the majors, and so on?
Yeah, so I grew up in Hudson Valley. It's a little bit north of New York City. Originally from New York City, but our parents moved us up out of the city when I was about 5 or 6 years old. So I was always involved in fitness, in athletics growing up. I competed in the martial arts at pretty high levels in the Junior Olympics and the World Karate Championships. I played baseball and a number of other sports, but competitive. Went on to play college baseball and some years in the collegiate leagues. So I was always involved in athletics, and I was always interested in getting that extra step, and outperforming the competition on the field. So that's where, behind the scenes, I was doing research on my own, about how I can gain a little extra speed, how I can get stronger. So I went to school for exercise science. Went to Alfred State College to start, and I played athletics there. And then I transferred to a small school in Tennessee, University of Tennessee Southern, and I finished up my academic career there. Went on to get a master's degree in exercise science at California University of Pennsylvania. So upon graduation, my academic advisor at the time told me about the National Strength and Conditioning Association, and I had no idea about it. He printed out the website, handed it to me the day before graduation. I still remember like it was yesterday. I was walking back to my dorm room with the flyer that he printed out, and I was like, you know what, this is what I want to do. I want to work with the elite, the best of the best in the world. I want to change as many lives as possible. And so right from that moment, I started studying for the CSC exam, and I took that in 2006, 2007. And I've been with the NSCA ever since. It's been an incredible journey. Met so many amazing people along the way, and I really appreciate their help and support over the years.
Fantastic. Well, how did you land the job with the Royals?
So then So upon graduation, I did personal training probably for about a year once I got out of school. And then I started working at Velocity Sports Performance in Mahwah, New Jersey. And that's where I really started learning the speed um, and the techniques behind developing speed and power. While I was working there, my goal was to get into professional sports or the Olympic setting. So I used the NSCA job board, and I applied to a number of different teams through the NSCA job board, MLB teams, NHL, college. I was young. I just wanted to get my foot in the door. And then I heard back from the Kansas City Royals. And before you know it, we had a couple interviews, and I was on my way to Surprise, Arizona for spring training in February of 2008. And from February 2008 until now, I've been involved in professional baseball, met so many incredible coaches, players from all around the world, and it's really been a great ride.
Wow. Surprise was one of the fastest growing towns right around 2006, 2007. My father in law actually still lives there. But man, you got baseball field after baseball field all around you. They were developing like neighborhoods and putting schools in there. It was amazing. So you were right on the wave riding through there. That must have been pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. When I first went out there, 2008, it was my first time out west, and yeah, it was just basically our facility, our spring training complex. But then now when you go back out there, it is just completely different. They built high rises around, and it's unrecognizable. Yeah.
Yeah, and you were with them for the Royal organization for close to 9 years. What did you do over the course of that time?
Yeah, so for the 9 years, I started out working at the rookie ball level in Burlington, North Carolina. It's a short A team, so their season started right around the end of June and finished the end of August. So I in 2008, my first year, I worked spring training, and then they have extended spring training. So any players that don't make a full season team, like high A, double A, triple A, they stay there for an extended period of time and work on different things. And then you have the amateur draft that happens. So we get some players from the draft, and then they have a rookie team. So they're called short A teams, and we had three of them at the time. One was located in Arizona, one was in Idaho Falls, and the other one was Burlington, North Carolina. So I started in Burlington, North Carolina, um, and yeah, we played at maybe 60 games or so. And these are very young kids at the time. I was young myself. I was only in my early 20s at the time. Um, so I started there, and then the following year I went to Low A in Burlington, Iowa. So I started there again, had the season, had the team, helped develop these guys at the lower levels in the minor leagues. It's more about development, right? It's about the slow cooker approach, so to speak. Sometimes we're getting young players from all over the world. This is their first introduction to strength training, to plyometrics. Just teaching them the importance of sleep and creating these healthy habits at a young age, so that when they develop through the system and they get to the major leagues, they've have established some of these important protocols, some of these important methods and strategies. And then, so that was 2009, low A, Burlington, Iowa. 2010 and 11, I was in Double A, Northwest Arkansas. 2012, Triple A, Omaha, Nebraska. And then I went back down to work with a really solid low A club in Lexington, Kentucky. So the organization got an affiliate in Lexington that year. So I worked there, went up to high A, Wilmington, Delaware, and then made the jump back to AAA in 2015 and 16 in Omaha again. And then 2017 transitioned to the major league level with Tampa Bay.
Right on. Well, it's funny, Joey, because I'm thinking that, okay, as a strength coach, strength conditioning professional like yourself, starts just like the athletes themselves in the lower organizations. And then as you gain experience, more knowledge, and so on, you make your way up the ranks just like the players do. But paradoxically, I'm thinking actually it may benefit in a way to go in the opposite direction, where you've got the elite level MLBers and you're just making micro adjustments. So the programs are almost already in place, and you're just tweaking here and there, which does require a lot of ingenuity, instinct, knowledge, and experience for sure. I'm not discounting that. But at the same time, I'm like, wow, think of how much more bandwidth, opportunity to develop the up and coming younger players. Like I could see from a strength conditioning perspective that it may be more enticing to head in the opposite direction rather than up the ranks. What do you feel about that?
Oh, absolutely. I agree 100%. I'm thinking about my experience that I've gained over the 17 years here, and I would have more of an impact on those lower level athletes than I do at major league level. A lot of these players could basically roll out of bed and go ahead and hit a ball.
Yeah.
They're so good, they're so talented. But like you said, there is some adjustments, some small movements. You're kind of guiding them in the right direction. You're making small adjustments each and every day to their programming. But at the lower levels, that's where you really need to focus on strength training, on conditioning, on speed, power, mobility, flexibility, all these different methods. But yeah, you would have somebody with my experience, your experience, you have a huge amount of impact on the lower levels.
Well, let's talk about that speed and power. How do you approach that? Like, because a lot of the listening audience is all about strength conditioning. So it's not like we have to talk at the base level. We can go in depth and get into the finer points. So tell me, how do you approach it?
Yeah, so speed and power, it can be complicated at times. I like to use a simple approach to developing speed, developing explosive power. I think applying force is a huge benefit to developing speed. You have to be strong enough to apply a good amount of force into the ground. And then the other thing is developing rhythm and coordination. So what I mean by developing rhythm and coordination, those are your skips, your marching, your switches, all your running drills. And then you need the necessary strength from the weight room in order to apply that force and to develop the speed. Um, you know, Throughout the season, working with the major leaguers, I'm watching them run during the game. And then, these are established running athletes, right?
Yeah.
Baseball is unique because we do have the turn. We're not straight ahead all the time. But I love resisted running. Resisted running, basically, the athlete figures it out themselves. They get that feeling of pushing the ground down and away. So I like doing resisted runs before the games. And so that athlete can feel that, down and away, that horizontal push as they can go into the game and utilize that. But but I think overall, speed, power development, I think we tend to complicate things. But I like to keep things simple, and have this systematic approach of getting strong in the weight room, developing that rhythm and coordination, and applying it to whatever sport you may be playing.
So the players, they don't come in with rhythm and coordination that you need to instill this, or is it just a reinforcing of neuromuscular patterning? You know what I mean? Like, or do you have some players that suddenly you say, okay, we're going to do some A skips, and they're going ipsilateral, right arm driving forward with the right knee, and you're going, oh my gosh, I can't believe this guy's even in the majors. I mean, no names, by the way, no names, but are you seeing this? Do you see lack of coordination, or is it just the fine points that we're talking?
Yeah, it's most at this level, it's mostly the fine points that we're talking about, that neuromuscular coordination. Um, However, you'll be surprised sometimes, the way some of these elite athletes are moving, so to speak. But definitely at the lower levels of the minor leagues, the A ball, double A, that's where you really need to develop that rhythm of the coordination. And even lower levels before that, right? The college setting, the high school setting, some of the amateur travel teams. That's where it starts. However, players and athletes, they do tend to get through all that just on their talent alone. And then we get them, and we tend to clean things up, so to speak, in their movement abilities, in their coordination, in their rhythm. But yeah, you know, Most of the time
Okay.
up here, they're more polished at the major league level.
Yeah, I would definitely hope so. So let's just take skipping, seeing we're talking about it. Baseball is not linear per se. There's obviously tremendous amounts of transverse plane action with swing of the bat, or throwing of a ball, and of just running the bases. And there's a little bit of that frontal plane motion too. So when it comes to skips, are you sticking with a linear programming? Are you doing multi-planar? Are you doing lateral skips? Are you doing rotational skips? Are you doing backward skips, or is it just forward? I'm just curious. How do you incorporate multi-planar movement into this, if you do?
Yeah. So for that example, either pre-game or pre-workout, we can include a variety of different skips. We can go forward, backward, lateral. I like to use them all. Um, the different planes of motion, and emphasizing on the lateral skips and it really hard explosive movement. So we'll do our lateral skips, but really focus on pushing the ground down in a way. But I like to use them all, use them as prep work in the weight room, right into their strength training workout, or prior to the game. We can do some skips into some bounding into sprinting. So that's kind of the progression we use.
And when it comes to resisted sprints or assisted sprints, going beyond sprint speed and having them to focus on deceleration above and beyond what they might normally do, potentially for like hamstring pull prevention, is this something part of your program as well?
Yeah. So we like to use the resisted running pregame with a band or a bungee. Um, and then in the off season months, obviously we'll have more time to work on improving sprint speed. And that's where the sleds come in, the hill sprints come in, any type of resisted running like that. And then the high speed stopping also included in their program, more on their change of direction day. So in their programming, if we're performing, say, an upper body workout that day, we like to do all their agility and change of direction stuff first, and then go into the weight room, perform upper body. On their lower body strength days, we'll do all of our speed work first, and then come into the weight room to perform their lower body lifts. So that's kind of how we outline the off season program. In season, these guys are competing every day. They have games every day, practice every day. So we use Statcast as our workload management as far as running comes. So every time the player does a sprint on the field, we get a printout, we get a report on how many sprints they've done 90% or above their max speed. And then we'll be able to, guys that haven't hit max speeds, we'll be able to bring them out earlier in the day, get them on the field, and kind of expose them to those high speed sprints for the hamstring injury prevention, as you mentioned.
And sprint distance, what are we talking? 20, 30, 40? How many meters?
Yeah, for acceleration, we're typically right around that 20 yard, 30-yard range. Yeah. And then if
Do you
we're going to get into
find
the high speed sprints, we'll do the flying tens or flying 20s. You'll build up 20 or 30 yards, and then accelerate 10 or 20 yards.
do you ever do you ever change up the, I'll say, the force direction, the vector, the direction in which they're running? Do you do serpentine runs like S runs? Do you do curved runs so that you're really developing a little bit of that deceleration from the infinite number of force vectors you create when running in a curved path? Anything like that, or is that strictly all preseason stuff? You stay away from it in season.
Yeah. So in season, again, pregame, you'll see some guys that will do the S runs,
Mm-hmm.
both sides to really just make sure their hamstrings, you put your hamstrings at a different angle as you're running those S, and, baseball is it's a big curve, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, in addition to the resisted running with the bands and the skipping and the marching and the acceleration work, some guys will do the S runs. I highly recommend it for baseball players, for young baseball players, to definitely do some of the curved running prior to the game. As far as plugging it into their program, that will be into one of their multi-directional speed days prior to an upper body workout. So that's kind of how we add the curved running or resisted curve running into their overall yearly plan.
And out of this whole program, is there anything new? that you're going, oh, we got obviously StatCast, sports science, major role in determining fatigue states, if they're at their right volume of work and so on, and intensity levels. But aside from the sports science, the actual program, the selection of exercises or drills, is there anything new that you've been playing with that isn't proprietary information?
Yeah. So we've actually been going back to the eccentric leg curl machine. We've been plugging that in. So, we do the NOR board. We get hamstring numbers on the NOR board, right? We do our high speed sprints. We do our single leg RDLs or RDLs bilateral, but we've been plugging back in, which I think as an industry, and especially a sports performance industry, we've gotten away from the uh, leg curl machine based hamstring. So, but we've been playing with it with different tempos. So you have your eccentric coming down. We also do oscillating movements on the hamstring leg curl. So where we'll
Unilateral
come,
and bilateral?
yeah, unilateral and bilateral. So we'll curl up, we'll come down halfway, and we'll perform or oscillatory movements. So you're just kind of doing short reps, short reps, short reps, about 5, and then come back up for a full rep. So we've been playing around with some of the tempos, 2 legs up, 1 leg down, and then the rapid eccentrics with it too. So we have an actual flywheel hamstring curl, so they can accelerate that weight up, but then it's really pulling you down. So we've been playing
That's
around
very
with that.
cool.
Yeah, and guys love it. So yeah.
Yeah, I've just been playing around with using super band around the chest, under the arms, anchored behind me to a squat cage or stall bars in our case for the Nordic curls, because that allows people to get the fullest range of motion. Yes, it's submaximal, but they're actually achieving a greater range than they normally would without any assistance whatsoever, and been huge for developing some good posterior chain strength. So
Mm.
I don't know if you guys do that at all.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I love that. Yeah, we do the same thing. We hook them up to a band on the NOR board, Vol NOR board, get some numbers on that, maybe do 1 set on that and then 1 full set without the band.
Yeah,
But yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, it's all
right on.
great stuff. Yeah, I love it.
Okay, so then rotary power. I'm thinking that you probably have this aperture in coaching, meaning like in a camera where you can widen the lens and narrow it, where you're going to go with global power production, but then you're going to determine, we need more power from this bony structure or articulation, this area of the body. So we're going to work on that, not necessarily isolate, but we're going to bring it down so we get a lot more out of that area, whether it's like trunk rotation or pelvic rotation, or we've got hip rotation or ankle, you know what I'm saying? Or we even got internal, external rotation of the shoulder. But then we're going to put it back together in terms of like global rotary power. Am I on board with that, or is that something different? How do you develop rotary power in your baseball players?
Yeah, so I mean, these guys, the athletes that we work with are extremely powerful when they rotate,
Yeah.
throwing, hitting, and I mean, they rotate every day, all day, every movement they do. So they go through assessments, hip IR, internal rotation, hip external rotation, thoracic spine mobility assessments with our sports science team. So we collect these numbers, we see who needs the most work. And then we go from there, whether it's mobility around the hips or the T-spine or the shoulders. Um, but these guys are rotating every day with their sports, so we are kind of mindful of the amount of rotation we're doing within the sports. But we utilize med balls, explosive med ball rotations, different exercises for mobility around the hips in their prep work prior to going out and rotating, swinging in the cage or throwing on the field. So that's kind of
But But what about counter rotation? Because all your athletes are going to be dominant in one arm. Your pitchers, obviously, your batters can switch stance, yes, and switch it, but there's always going to be the dominant force production in one direction, either left rotation or right rotation. So do you play around with that? Because there's some strength coaches that are like, I'm not messing with that because it's going to mess with their game. So we're just going to watch out for that.
yeah. So, I mean, again, the amount of volume, the amount of rotation they're doing on that one side, there's nothing that we can do on the other side to to help even it up, so to speak, if that's what you're asking. So, but we will rotate on both sides. So if we're doing, explosive rotational tosses on one side, we'll do them on the other side. If the analytics find that, one player's closed off too much on a certain hip, then we can address that individual area in the weight room or in the training room. But we're not trying to even up the amount of rotations on one side of the or to the other. But again, these guys are highly explosive rotational athletes, and watching them rotate, and then if you have someone who's not, say, just like a soccer player, and they try to come in and try to rotate the way these players do, it's not even close. So again, I think there's a lot of fine tuning at the elite level, at the major league level, as far as rotation goes. Perhaps at the lower levels, I think you can probably see some more improvements in hip rotation, thoracic mobility, and developing that explosive rotational power. But these guys at the elite level, I mean, they are rotationally explosive as it is.
All right. And so you mentioned assessments. I'm assuming that your staff probably do open and closed chain movement assessments. I know some people will say, well, if they can't do it in an open chain, they're not going to be able to do it in a closed chain, so we don't even bother. But regardless of that, what kind of assessments as a strength coach do you initiate with your players?
Yeah, so we have, again, our sports science team, which we probably have the largest in baseball. They have a battery of assessments. We're involved in that, but starting at the shoulder strength, shoulder mobility, IR, ER. Again, at the hips, mobility and strength, IR, ER.
Yeah, but in terms of the weight room, what about that? Like, I know every exercise can be an assessment, and therefore every assessment's an exercise. So, but are there go-to moves that are going to show you a tremendous amount about the athlete, whether it's say a power clean, a kettlebell swing, anything within the weight room that's on your menu of lifts? Are there things that you want to really witness every player doing because it covers a lot of bases?
Yeah, so like you said, each exercise is an assessment, right? You're watching the way they move. I love the split squat. You're working the glutes, the quads, and one leg, but you're also getting some flexibility in the hip, good core strength. So you're able to see any type of trunk rotation. Perhaps the player's kind of internally rotating there. You can address those needs. Pull downs or pull ups. You can see the way the scapular's movement, especially in these overhead athletes. Any type of rows, again, you'll be able to see, the posterior muscles, their scapula moving. So that's another good assessment. Some of the other core exercises that we do, Palloff presses. We're just making sure that these guys are strong enough. They're not compensating either at the hip or bending forward. Upper body wise, they're not compensating and dropping their neck down because they're weak in the rhomboids and in the scapula. So again, each exercise is an assessment, so to speak. But we don't get numbers from those movements. However, a good set of eyes and, experienced coaching can really pick up on those movements. But then if you tie that into what the other departments are doing and we get in some of these numbers behind these movements, you can really help players.
And when it comes to numbers or percentages, when it's considering the strength program that the players are executing that you've created, how much percentage are bilateral lifts or moves versus unilateral or contralateral?
Yeah. So again, I think that would be depending on the athlete, right? If an athlete does need to get stronger, perhaps they need more volume throughout the course of the season. We want to make sure we're maintaining muscle mass. Then we'll make sure that they're doing more bilateral movements in the weight room. Um, some of our players that are, say strong enough, some of our players that maybe need a deload workout, we'll put them in more of a unilateral exercise position and or exercise program. But we have some players that, it's a long season. We need to maintain a healthy weight and we need that muscle mass on their legs. So, say if we start with a bilateral movement, there will be a single leg or single arm component in there. But we like to pick and choose and mix and match as far as bilateral, unilateral goes.
And when it comes to certain lifts or strength moves, are there some you just stay away from? You're like, every now and then there's going to be an exception. This player might need it or they like it. So we're going to keep it in the program because that allows buy-in on the rest of the stuff that we're doing with them. But ultimately, Joey, are there moves that you go, yeah, where it doesn't serve a purpose as much as people are thinking, or I'd prefer to spend more time doing this?
Yeah. I think every exercise has a purpose. I don't think
Yeah.
there's, a best or great exercise or a wrong exercise. I think if you can rationalize what you do, ultimately you can plug in an exercise. But you know, as far as like power cleans, we really don't do, the explosive Olympic lifting with baseball players because of the wrist.
Uh-huh.
Hitting, throwing, fielding, everything's done with the wrist. So some play, we do have young players, say from Latin America. They haven't been exposed to any strength training. So, we're just getting them going. However, we do get players from major universities who've had, explosive Olympic lifts in their program. When they come into professional sports, the amount of baseball, the amount of volume that they go through, and teaching those movements, we don't feel comfortable enough. However, if there's a player that performs them well, then obviously we would say, okay, let's go ahead and continue to do so. But most players that come from these major universities that have done Olympic lifting, when they get into pro sports, they really, you know, they really don't, continue the Olympic lifts. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And then what are if just speaking of lifts themselves, are there like do you have the top three that is all that will be almost in everyone's program with obvious exceptions every now and then, but are there go-tos where you're like, yeah, we want to establish a baseline on these three lifts?
Yeah. So right now the biggest lower body movement we've been doing is the hand supported split squat. So our guys are loving the hand supported split squat. So we're able to load those. Uh, we're able to add pauses into those. So we've been utilizing that a lot. And then, like I said, those leg curls with the different tempos, eccentric, the oscillating movements. We've been utilizing those. And then, we do a variety of different horizontal presses and horizontal pulls, different rows, heavy rows. Like I said, uh, I like to keep things simple. I think simple is a little bit better than more complicated movements. So, um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
And you
those are
rely
probably the
on
top
the
three.
the polyp press for doing something that they probably don't do very often, which is static stability of the spine. They're constantly rotating. So is that to offset all of that rotary power that the baseball players have?
Yeah, so any of the split stance pal-offs, double leg pal-offs, yeah, that's kind of in there to be able to brace themselves in that position. We like to do different lateral side bends too, as far as just for like spine health. We do a lot of movement and rotation this way, but we like to also move the spine lateral. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why we have that in there.
And then as regards to isometrics, is there a place? Because I look at the polyp press primarily as an isometric engagement of all those trunk muscles. So do you do the same thing with, say, hip musculature or shoulder musculature?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll do isometric pauses for different shoulder movements, lower body movements, even upper body movements. Yeah, like upper body horizontal presses will come down with the chest press, pause for 3 seconds, explode up. Yeah, we like to play with the different tempos, eccentrics, isos, rapid eccentrics. Yep, they're
And
all in the
then
program.
you mentioned the wrist as like, hey, we want to we that's an area that we want to be aware of, and I won't say cautious, but really just keeping a high level of awareness on it? Do you do strength exercises for that as well? Are you punching into a bucket of rice? Are you doing dowels? Or are you just letting them work on their throws and their hits? How do you is there wrist development, and what does it look like?
Yeah, especially for our position players. Um, with the amount of gripping that they're doing already, in the weight room, we'll at the end of their workouts, we'll use like the fat grips and we'll do some hammer curls, different wrist rotations with the mojo, things like that. We'll do the banded around the fingertips. There's like a little band that
Mhm.
goes around the fingertips, and we'll come out to work those extensors, or just the hand grips. We'll just do those. But yeah, that's, as far as our form and wrist programming, we'll add those in. Yeah, reverse curls, things like that. Plate holds, where they just hold plates for like 20, 30 seconds, squeezing it with their fingertips. And then we've been using with our pitchers too, which I think there's some studies done with the UCL. It's a rock climbing tool that just hits your fingertips. So you tie a band to, like, say, a kettlebell or a plate, and you're just using your fingertips to squeeze it. And there's just a little ledge where your fingers can kind of hook on, and we've
Mhm.
been utilizing that for mostly our pitchers, but our position players like it too. But it's a rock climbing device, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. Now, and you mentioned like hip and T spine in terms of mobility. What about ankle? What are you doing down at the ankle? Because that's the other big bucket when it comes to the three top mobility areas.
Yeah. So with the ankle, they'll do an ankle assessment in spring training. We like to stick around like that 10, 10 to 12 range of motion score. If guys are like single digit, we kind of look at them individually. Like, is this an explosive athlete, right? Because you do need some stiffness in that ankle to apply that force. So we don't want our ankles to be Gumby like, to be like, 14 or 15 on the score. Because then there's just so much time on the ground when they run, or, they apply force into the ground. So we kind of want some stiffness on that.
Yeah.
But say if a guy is tight, we'll work inversion, eversion of the ankle. We can hook up a band, kind of have some assistance. We'll do some calf stretching, some different ankle mobs that we can do. But yeah, for the most part, mostly that we find. I mean, we assessed a lot of guys, and our ankles have been pretty good.
Right on.
If a player is restricted, we can do some things as far as like heel elevation in the weight room for certain exercises. But yeah.
Okay. So I'm thinking hamstring pull, adductor strain, or groin pull, and obviously for the pitcher's elbow. How do you bulletproof those areas? How do you Kevlar those areas?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing you have to do is approach them and train those muscles, train those movements. I think, some coaches tend to shy away from, like, oh, we have hamstring injuries, but let's not train the hamstrings. I think that's the biggest problem. So
Mhm.
I would say, very aggressive. Be aggressive at training the hamstrings, the adductors, any groin muscles. Um, the rapid eccentrics, high speed sprints for the hamstrings, the Norboard. All those exercises are great. As far as the adductors, we like the Copenhagen side planks. We like utilizing the slide board, with our
Mhm.
pitchers, our position players, especially in spring training. Let's just get them moving, really light up those adductors. So I would take an aggressive approach to training some of those movements. Yeah.
And then now you're in season, so you're looking at like game day -1, game day -2. You're on the road currently as we speak, and then you've got a West Coast tour coming up, and you're bouncing all around. So aside from dealing with time zones and sleep patterns, like what is your program? How do you adjust your programming on the in season when we're talking about those times, like game day -2?
Yeah. So, on travel days, the biggest thing that we can do is keep these guys motivated, keep them consistent into their routine, right? And sometimes, we have to, have just a lighter workout for them, especially when they go West Coast to East Coast. And we've been on the West Coast, say, for 6 days. You come back east, it's going to take them about a week to adjust, but we don't have that much time to, we have to, the game's going to be at 7 o'clock at night. So when these players come into the weight room, we need to give them things to make them feel better leaving the weight room than when they came in. So that way they can feel good competing that night. So we'll adjust some programming. Maybe we only do 2 sets of 3 reps, but a good amount of weight. We do some explosive work, give them some flexibility and mobility in there, get them moving around, get them out there to bat in practice, get them into the game feeling good to go out and compete. So, we again at the professional level, it's like the game is the most important thing that day. So what can we do in the weight room to prepare our players to feel their best to go out and compete at the highest level? So that's kind of how we adjust the programming. But then say if we're home for a good homestand, 10 days, now we're okay. We've been sleeping in our own beds, right? We've been, eating the food that we're normally eating. We have our normal routines at home. So now we can go ahead and while we're at home, we can push these guys a little bit more. But I think the biggest thing is like know when to push them, know when to back off.
And when you're on the road, what's in your travel bag as a strength coach? I mean, I'm sure you've got facilities at your disposal, but maybe there's times that you don't have the ability to use that, and you're relegated to the hotel gym. Does that happen?
Yeah, sometimes. We have visiting weight rooms next to our visiting clubhouses, and they're getting better. They're actually pretty good. So basically, we have everything we need when we go on the road. We do pack a small bag, a small trunk. In that bag, we have some soft tissue devices for guys that really like certain products. I would say we'll make sure we
Sticks,
have them.
guns, balls, that type of
Yeah,
thing.
lacrosse balls, golf balls to kind of get in between their toes, little things like that. Bands, a number of different bands, so right for some players. Water bags. They don't have those on the road, but guys like to warm up with certain water bags and movements. And we like to add those in too. If it's a lighter workout, sometimes we get into the hotel at 2 or 3 in the morning. Players are exhausted. They just got off the field. It's hot, humid weather. They played 9 innings, but we want them to move around. We can't just have them sit around at their locker and then go out for BP and try to compete in a game. So we bring the water bags and we just give them a little workout with that to kind of just get their nervous system going a little bit, toss some med balls, and then go out to BP in the game. But yeah, for the most part, it's soft tissue devices, the water bags, like I mentioned. Yeah, and that's pretty much about it. And just kind of some slides, the valve slides. We bring them for our lateral lunges again to hit those adductors, those groin muscles in season. We like to use body saws with those too.
Mm-hmm.
Programming body saws because these guys are overhead athletes. They spend the majority of their time with their arms over their head. So we like to program in and get strong in that lengthened position. So we add the valve slides in there. Again, some of those rock climbing devices for our grip strength, our hand strength, throw those in the trunk too. So we have those on the road. But for the most part, the major league facilities are well equipped.
How many strength coaches are on your team aside from yourself?
We have 3 strength coaches on my team. We have a
And
head major league coach and a rehab role, a rehab coach that stays back with our rehab players, and then 2 of us travel.
all right. And when it comes to developing the programs for your players, how do you divvy that up?
Yeah, it's collectively. We come up with, okay, what guys, what's most important, and let's develop this framework, so to speak. How do we want our program to flow? And then we plug and play with different exercises, and what's most important, we include those in, and then we have a big program, and then we individualize from that one program to each and every individual athlete based on the sports science recommendations, based on our biomechanist recommendation, gain all this information, and then we individualize the programs from there.
And positionally, is that how you break it up? Like here's the programs for your catchers or pitchers, your infielders, outfielders?
We have in the past, but
How do you do it now?
yeah, really, we just have one major program for all of our 26 players. So
Really?
here's an upper body workout. Here's a upper body program. We have three separate lifts on that. Here's our lower body, three separate lifts, and then a total body has three separate lifts. And then we'll stick to that for about 3 weeks or so. And then we'll just plug and play with some little bit of changes and exercises. And then we individualize, okay, this guy needs, more unilateral work, or he needs more mobility here, or this guy really needs to get stronger. So, we're going to do this with him, and then, each workout, it's got different tempos on there, different velocity tempos. And then, there's a lighter workout. So for a travel day, or we have a day game that day where we get in early in the morning. So workout 3 is always like the lighter workout. So the players can hit that, get them feeling good, get them out.
Oh, that sounds refreshing. That you don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. You're just gonna, hey, let's keep it simple. Everybody should be able to do these movements. And if there's something that pops up, we're going to individualize it here and here. Wow. That's
Yeah,
nice. And
yeah,
then
absolutely.
that's more of a team approach too, where everyone's kind of doing the same thing. So a little bit more camaraderie, I imagine.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. We just kind of develop that structure, develop that, structure, so to speak. And then we just plug and play, and, everybody's on board, and we just keep guys feeling good, keep them motivated, get them in, get them out.
Okay. A few more questions here, Joey. And I really appreciate it because you're just giving me so much insight, and I'm very
Appreciate it.
grateful for it. But
Yeah.
you're what's your superpower? What do you do really well that maybe lets you stand apart from others? What do you feel like that is, your superpower?
Yeah. So I feel like, developing relationships, trust with players, motivating players, some of the soft skills necessary to do the things necessary to get these guys better, right? So I think I'm really good at that. I'm really good at assessing a player, kind of finding out where he's at right now, what this player needs, and developing that plan to get them to where they want to be. So, for example, I had a player who was a very strong athlete, very, very strong, very explosive, bilateral. And then I started doing things, and he was injured. He got injured. So, we had him during rehab, and I'm kind of working with him. And then I'm thinking, okay, there's got to be something. What's this player's weakness? And I was able to kind of figure that out. Like, okay, I put him on one leg and try to have him do, explosive work on one leg, or some strength work on one leg. And he couldn't really do it. It was mind blowing. So I'm like, wow. I was like, listen, you are extremely strong. You are extremely explosive. But I said, you can be better. You have a window of improvement here. And then we started utilizing some of these exercises, single leg work, explosive work, really focusing on getting deep into the legs, deep into the hips. And yeah. And I think still to this day, he's been on to other different teams, but still to this day, he tells me that he utilizes a lot of some of that single leg work that he learned during that rehab time. So,
Sweet.
yeah, yeah,
Okay. And what's your kryptonite?
yeah. I think a lot of it is overthinking. You know, scratching out exercises. Trying to make things too perfect, so to speak. Yeah, and instead of saying, "Hey, this is good. This program's good, and let's just go. Let's go with it." uh, you know, ship it, so to speak. Yeah.
All right. Very cool. And okay, what gets you up in the morning?
Uh, well, three
Aside from
kids
the
jump.
alarm clock.
Yeah, 3 kids jumping into bed, 6 o'clock. But yeah, um,
That's right. You're a young dad. You got 3 with 1 on the way, man.
yeah,
Talk about simplifying. How are you going to do that?
yeah. I don't know. I guess you just kind of figure it out, right? But no, I think I have a lot to offer. There's so many lives to change out there, and that just motivates me and drives me each day.
Man, so good. I'm just, it's a thrill getting to know you in this last hour or so here. It's just
Likewise.
been a joy. If people want to just just follow you perhaps, or just get connected with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, they can reach out to me on Instagram, just Joey Greany, on any of the social handles, Instagram, X, LinkedIn. Yeah, just search my name, reach out. I love to speak to many different coaches as possible and learn from them.
Sweet. Well, Joey, I can't thank you enough for coming on, and good luck with all the travel and the new baby that'll be on the way soon, and all things in your future. I can't thank you enough for taking time out and sharing some knowledge and experience with us.
Rocky, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
And that's a wrap for this episode of the Zealous Podcast. I want to thank Joey Greany for coming on, as well as Tampa Bay Rays organization. Remember, if you're looking for in-service days for your team, continuing education workshops can be provided by RockySnyder.com. Chiropractors, athletic trainers, physical therapists, strength coaches, we cover them all. Get onto line and get to SetanticCollege.com. If you're interested in a master's program in science for performance, strength and performance, and so on, just go to SetanticCollege.com, enter RS10, get 10% off today for your tuition. And remember, go online to the NSCA's website. There is an election process happening right now. You don't have to vote for me. Just get out there and vote. Cast your vote today at nsca.com, and we'll see you next week.